Respected Pranab ji, colleagues on the dais, Sonia ji, Rahul ji, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I deem it a great privilege to be associated with the release of the third volume of Shri Pranab Mukherjee's memoirs. Pranab ji and I have worked together in many capacities way back since the early 1970s. And I recall when he joined the finance ministry as a junior minister to Sri Subramaniam, I had the privilege of serving him as secretary of the ministry. And among other things, I recall him and me traveling together to Bombay, where Sri Subramaniam was hospitalized when the budget for 1976 was made, in fact, in that hospital, and both of us were partners. And from that day onward, I developed close relationship with Shri Pranab Mukherjee, which took the shape of my going to the Reserve Bank of India, and he became the finance minister, and he successfully presided over India returning prematurely the loan that we had taken from the International Monetary Fund. Then Shri Pranab Mukherjee is a politician by choice, and he is one of the greatest politicians living in our country. I became a politician by accident when Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao invited me to become the finance minister. And in that capacity, I worked closely with Pranab ji, who was then the deputy chairman of the Planning Commission, Minister for Commerce, and Minister for External Affairs. And that association has lasted till right now. I also recall the contributions that Pranab ji made as one of the greatest living congressmen. And in some ways, this is reflected in the earlier chapters of his memoirs. And I believe that he will be recognized as one of the greatest living congressmen whom the Congress turned to whenever there was a crisis or whenever there was a ticklish matter to be resolved, which Pranab ji alone could be relied upon to find a solution. Then came the period when I became finance minister, and I said we work very closely with each other. Then came 2004, and Sonia ji chose me to be the Prime Minister, and Pranab ji was the most distinguished colleague that I had. He had every reason to feel a grievance that he was better qualified than I was to become the Prime Minister, but he also knew that I had no choice in the matter. And therefore, that smoothened our relationship. We ran the government as a cohesive team, of which Shri Pranab Mukherjee was the most important member. I do not recall any matter, any serious issue on which we had differences of opinion. I invariably took note of the fact that he was one of the most senior-most members of our party, was my most senior-most colleagues, and together with Sharad Pawarji and Pranabji, I had the greatest regard and respect, and I recognized that both of them were men of great caliber whose voice need to be heard and whose views had to be respected. And that's why, contrary to what people may say or write, the UPA government was a very smoothly running government. There were no tensions in our parliament. And as a mark of my trust and respect for Pranabji, I turned to him whenever a difficult matter was to be discussed in the cabinet. I devised the I devised an instrument of group of ministers, and invariably I turned to Pranabji to head the group of ministers, and he came with a solution which the cabinet was very pleased to endorse. And therefore, if the UPA cabinet worked very smoothly, I think a large measure of credit goes to Pranabji. I have been very privileged to have him as my colleagues, and his role in management of national affairs as a parliamentarian, as a minister of defense, of finance, of external affairs, and the role that he played in all these ministries, I think history will record his great contribution to the management of Indian polity and Indian economy. He will be remembered as one of the greatest living parliamentarians who had a knack of getting different points of view reconciled on the floor of Parliament. And for all these matters, I, for one, am very, very grateful to Shri Pranab Mukherjee because, as I said, he had every reason to believe that he should be the Prime Minister. That didn't happen, but that didn't affect our relationship, and that relationship of deep and abiding friendship will last as long as we both are living. With these words, I congratulate Pranabji for producing a third volume which wonderfully describes the role that he played in the management of India's polity. God bless him.